Chevron's LNG production at its facilities in Western Australia have been disrupted this week by an outage at the Wheatstone plant, along with strike action from workers. Woodside Energy was also temporarily halted from carrying out seismic testing in the Scarborough gas field. Joining me now is energy analyst Saul Kavonic. Saul, let's start with Chevron. How bad have the work stoppages and the outages been this week?
Well, this outage at Chevron's Wheatstone facility couldn't have come at a better time for the unions. They're in the midst of escalating their strike action, and strikes are in fact most effective when you see equipment, like in this case a turbine, trip and needs to be restarted, and that actually requires a more experienced crew. And that's why you see the unions use this opportunistically as a chance to get greater leverage.
But Saul, a few weeks ago, Woodside seemed to reach a deal with the union pretty quickly. What do you think the big difference is with Chevron here? Why are there so many more stoppages and issues?
Well, I think Chevron is taking more, if we can call it, American approach here. Tougher negotiations. They've also prepared a lot more for this, so they were expecting some industrial action and are better prepared for it than some of the other parties might have been over the last 12 months where the unions have won awards. And I think there's been, a breakdown of trust between unions and Chevron, more so than we've seen with Woodside a few weeks ago, which is making all of this all the more difficult. But ultimately, we do have precedents across 3 facilities over the last year. We do know where the outcome of this should be, but this is a much more parochial, difficult negotiation process because of the parties involved, because of the way they approach these things, and that's why it's going to be a more painful process to what I ultimately think will be a very similar outcome at the end of the day.
And then Woodside, it was hit with a legal challenge on Thursday, forcing it to suspend undersea survey work in the Scarborough gas field. What impact is this going to have on Woodside's operations?
Well, this is just impacting the seismic. So in and of itself, it's not going to have a big impact. But this is part of a broader campaign by green activist litigation groups like the EDO, who are bringing this litigation, not just on this item, but across the entire industry, particularly focusing on Woodside Scarborough and Santos's Barossa project, where they're essentially trying to stymie and stop a project going ahead once it's actually already been sanctioned and everyone's financially committed to it. It's creating a very large problem across the industry. It is something which was never intended in terms of the regulations and how they would be essentially used by green activist organisations to stymie projects. And the government to date has done absolutely nothing to try and fix it. And it's widely expected that's because they don't want to be seen to do anything which might be interfering with Indigenous consultation matters ahead of the Voice referendum. And as a result, this has actually been probably one of the biggest issues on the policy front the industry's faced. It is also hurting our reputation internationally because our foreign trade partners, particularly in Japan and Korea, are seeing themselves committing to investment in Australia after the regulator has approved that investment. And then months later, once work is underway, litigation is being brought by activist green groups against the government's own regulator and halting everything from going forward. Now, the hope is that ultimately there's new consultation guidelines, industry will be able to work through them. But if that's not the case, depending on the outcome of some upcoming court cases, ultimately the government may have to intervene here and change the rules back to what they were really originally intended to be for. What we're seeing now is Indigenous consultation provisions requiring projects to consult with Indigenous groups over hundreds and hundreds of kilometres of area.
Saul Kavonic, thanks so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you.